Hey everyone, Jim and Chris back with another pressing question, and that's how do you come up with values for build to rent? You know, what gives value to your build to rent systems, your properties? And what we come down to is everything starts with rents when you're working in a build to rent model like we are. Chris, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that, how important rents are?
So when we start evaluating a property to purchase, develop, and build homes on, it's a very lengthy process. It could be 2 to 3 years from the time that we identify a piece of land until we actually have a completed home on that land. And so the very first thing that we look at when we're looking at a property is what are the rental rates in the area? That's what's going to tell us where we ultimately need to get back to from a perspective of a price that we can pay for the land. Because at the end of the day, you know, we know what our vertical construction costs are, but really it's the value of the land that changes in every single deal that we do, and how much does it cost us to develop the land. So, so you've got land price, development cost, price to build the home. But none of that matters at all if you can't get the right price for the land. And to figure out what that price is, you're working back off of variables that you know. So we know what it costs to build a home. We have an idea of the development cost, although those numbers typically have to get flushed out in due diligence because they can vary, pretty wildly. But assuming that it's a standard development, we know what that number is. And so really all we have to negotiate is the land price.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at what can we rent a home for today, knowing that we're not going to rent that home for 3 years. And what we know, over the long run is that it's not always a perfect match, but rents tend to go up over time, and they tend to go up over time as values go up over time. So, we can't always know exactly what that property is going to rent for 3 years from now, but we know that it's probably going to correlate to any changes in material costs or values of homes. So it really comes down to that number right there. So what do? We take it very first, before we contract a piece of property, we take it over to our leasing department, and we have them do what's called a comp, a comparison. You might have heard of sales comps. Well, this is rent comps. And they're taking a sampling of properties as close to like kind as we can, as close to what we plan to build as possible. And we're figuring out how much of those properties renting for in total dollars, and then how much of those properties renting for on a per square foot basis. Because let's say we're planning on building a 1,670 square foot house, but we can only find comps that are like 1,620, 1,630 square feet. So they're not exactly apples to apples. But if you get enough of those, even though they're not apples to apples, you're going to get a pretty good price per square foot. Now, I can't go take plan on building a 1,670 square foot house and comp it against a 3,000 square foot house or a 1,000 square foot house, because the price per square foot is going to be too wildly different. So, when we're doing these comps, we try to stay within a 100 square foot range to make sure that average cost per square foot or rent per square foot is going to be accurate.
Yeah. And so that is where things start. Hopefully, Chris, I think, did a great job explaining how if that nucleus of rent cannot be backed into by our leasing department with actual, close rental comparables at today's value. We're not even increasing for what we believe in 3 years. And if history repeats itself, the Florida markets we focus on will have rental increases, not year by year, but a year might be flat and then go up from there. But on the overall trajectory of long term, it goes up. We don't give any function to that when we're first making our numbers, because we want to be conservative. We want to make sure if things stayed flat for the next 3 years, we're still there. Even if they went down a little, we'd still be able to perform numbers for you. So that has to be the starting point of where we're at. And as Chris said, the land is the biggest thing that we can do. In fact, one of the most important things we were able to do in the beginning of the pandemic was buy a lot of land. Now that does have variables, as Chris said, of development costs and other things that changed a lot through the pandemic, and probably will never go back to where they were on pricing and materials. But that's where we always try to do extra conservative numbers to see where we're at. And once you can work off the rent, then we can say, okay, are we able, and this is the big thing about having a successful long-term approach to build to rent, because we've watched guys come and go, and we'd like to be here not only for the last 10 years, but the next 10 to 20 with all of our investors. And that question is, can we build it where those rents can be backed into and be matched up for a good sales comparable for the value of the area with the rents and still make a margin for ourselves? Now, as a lot of you know, and you've seen our videos before, by any comparison for any large builders that you would talk to about us, we're considered a low margin builder. And although I'm not the biggest fan of Walmart, if you've ever been there with 5 kids, you'd understand why. But if you go into a Walmart, what is their approach? And it's a very successful business. Do higher volume with less spread per each sale. And that's what Chris and his dad and I decided to go into, was do lower margins, but make up for it in volume. And not only with that, with extra products that most people won't have. And most people only will look at single family homes. As you know, we look at the single family, duplex, and quads. Each of them have to be assessed in a different way when we're backing in, but you do start with that nucleus of what could those rents start at, and can we back you into a successful property where you can cash flow, get in a good value, and obviously we have to make some sort of spread to be able to build the property for you. And that is kind of the back end of build to rent. We get questions every week. How do you determine, what you're going to pay for land? How do you, figure out your build cost? How do you know that you're going to be able to build something within where it's a good market value or a good rental market value? And that's how we back into it. It all starts with the rent. Chris, you got anything to finalize with that?
No, I mean, at the end of the day, we spend a lot of our time talking to landowners, and it's, you see these pieces of land that come up and that we're developing on, and it's hard to imagine how many parcels of land that we had to evaluate and negotiate to make the numbers work. We have very specific criteria, and to make the numbers work for our investors, we have to get really good deals on the land. And, and in some cases, in a lot of cases, we're having to buy that land below market value in order to be able to provide the returns that our clients are looking for. And that's a challenge. So, and you say, well, how do you do that? Well, it's a lot of conversations. It's a lot of showing spreadsheets to landowners and saying, hey, this is how we value the construction, the development, and so that means this is what's left that we can pay you for your parcel of land for us to be able to do a deal, and ultimately you are the beneficiary of all of those negotiations, and the fact that we're doing those spreadsheets up front and having those land conversations with these property owners 3 years before you ever even see a property come up on the for sale sheet.
A lot of moving parts to what we do, but hopefully we were able to break some of it down. Just remember, in finding true value, it all starts with the rents. What we have to do to get it done the right way for you is find the right markets, get into the land for the right pricing, like Chris said, and be able to back you into the deal with strong values, strong rents that hit you a return, hit us a margin as well for building it, and then continue to build together for a true build-to-rent venture. So hopefully this helped. We'll be doing more of these videos to explain the back end side of our business, and we appreciate you listening today. Take care.
Have a good one, everybody.